This morning in the shooting death that's shaken the nation. Nearly 1 month after the killing of unarmed Florida teenager Trayvon Martin, the gunman's lawyer is now speaking out, saying Neighborhood Watch Captain George Zimmerman is not a racist. ABC's Matt Gutman has the latest from Sanford, Florida. Good morning to you, Matt.
Hey, good morning, Bianna. For weeks, we've seen this monolithic portrait of George Zimmerman, the Neighborhood Crime Watch captain who worked in this community, who pursued, followed, and shot dead Trayvon Martin. Now his attorney painting a very different picture of a devout Catholic who was an insurance underwriter and mentored black children. For the first time, we're getting George Zimmerman's side of the story, his newly appointed lawyer now speaking out.
He's being misrepresented as being a racist, and he's told me he's not a racist. I've talked to other of his friends who are African American, and they don't think he's a racist either.
Speaking to CNN about the 911 tapes released last week, his answers were vague.
Has he heard what's being played on television?
I don't believe he has heard what's being played on television, nor have I.
Those 911 tapes?
This guy looks like he's up to no good, or he's on drugs or something. They always get away.
Have turned Zimmerman into one of the most hated men in America, but new details this morning of his life before the shooting. According to the Orlando Sentinel, he was employed as an underwriter at a mortgage risk management firm, but has not been at work since the shooting. Another report says Zimmerman was raised in a very religious family, and his father could sometimes be strict. All this as an explosion of protests sweep the nation. Last night, this vigil in the town where Martin was killed, and in Miami, the Miami Heat wearing Trayvon's initials on their sneakers and posting this picture online of the team in hoodies. It all capped an extraordinary day of protests across the country. The president delivering his own very personal comments on the case.
My main message is to the parents of Trayvon Martin. You know, if I had a son, he'd look like Trayvon. And I think they are right to expect that all of us as Americans are going to take this with the seriousness it deserves.
I know change is going to come.
On Capitol Hill, a moment of silence. In Philadelphia and Chicago, massive crowds. And across the country, high school students streaming out of schools. But Zimmerman's lawyer says this case is not about race. It's about self-defense.
Well, the ultimate issue is that there was some kind of scuffle took place, and there was a gun that was discharged, and now there's a young man dead. So the issue is the ultimate issue is, was it self-defense in his case?
And Dan, despite those many thousands clamoring across the nation for Zimmerman's arrest, there's a significant chance he may never be charged. Florida's Stand Your Ground law gives enormous leeway for people to use deadly force if they feel at all threatened. Dan?
Matt Gutman, who's been all over this story since it broke. Matt, thank you. Let's turn now to the former federal prosecutor, Sonny Hostin, who's with us this morning for some analysis. Thanks for coming in.
Thanks for having me.
How did his newly hired attorney do?
I don't think he did very well. I mean, bottom line is this case has received international attention. We have the President of the United States weighing in. There's a local investigation going on, a federal investigation going on, and he is the man representing the could-be defendant in this case. He said that he hadn't listened to the 911 tapes when everyone in the world, I think, has listened to them. He hasn't spoken to his client much about the shooting. That tells me that he's not preparing a defense in this case. I think it's just ludicrous. It's egregious.
Did you hear the seeds of any potential defense in there? He did, after all, say that his client is not a racist, that he had mentored 2 young African-American children. Did you hear anything that could be the basis for an effective defense down the road if he is ever charged?
Well, I think certainly he wanted to make sure that he was laying the groundwork for a defense against a federal hate crime, right? And that's why we heard him say he's not a racist and talk a little bit about his mentoring of African-American children. I think we also heard a bit about self-defense. He talked about his client's injuries, and under the Stand Your Ground law, I don't think it applies in this case anyway, but perhaps that is sort of laying a little bit of the groundwork for my client was attacked. But bottom line is, again, when you're talking about Stand Your Ground law, and I've spoken to Baxley, one of the supporters of the bill who pushed the bill through, he said this doesn't apply in this case because evidence shows that Zimmerman could have been the first aggressor. You can't start a fight and then claim self-defense.
He wasn't standing ground. He was pursuing. Very quickly, before I let you go, are you seeing any signs that there is a movement toward an arrest in this case?
I'm not sure about that. We know that there's a special prosecutor that has now been assigned to this case. She's indicated that she may she could arrest, she could decline to arrest, and she could present this to the grand jury. So I think it's a whole new ballgame at this point because of the new special prosecutor, because of the new investigators. So it's too soon to tell whether or not there will be an arrest in this case.
In the meantime, the outrage boiling over. Sunny Hudson, thank you very much. We really appreciate you joining us this morning.